These farms on the Murray River are at the heart of Australia's booming fruit and vegetable industry.
It's an in excess of $10 billion industry, and anything where we're growing food for Australia, it underpins our food security and our national security.
But the farmers who grow our fruit and veg here say they're facing a crippling labour crisis.
The question is, do we really allow these crops to rot on a tree or on the ground because the government can't get it together and get the visa system right?
So when you're at the supermarket buying your fruit and veg, do you ever think about who's picked it? Turns out thousands of those workers are working illegally. New data from Victoria reveals that 71% of farmers surveyed believe they had illegal workers on their farms. So you're essentially coming clean as an industry and saying, yes, we use thousands, if not tens of thousands of illegal workers.
I guess that's what we're saying, yeah.
The Victorian Farmers Federation just produced this study. It shows there's more than 5,000 fruit pickers without a work visa just in Victoria's Sunraysia. That's 28% of the workforce. And farmers say government inaction means they've got no choice but to use them. So you've lived this story. You're running a farm where you realise you had undocumented workers.
Correct, yep.
How many did you have on your property?
I don't know the exact number. We have workforce up to about 25 in the heat of the picking, and it was impossible to tell who was compliant.
Okay, so your survey found that there were over 5,000 illegal workers in the Sunraysia area alone. What do you estimate to be the total number of illegal workers in the horticulture, fruit and veg industry?
Difficult question for me to answer how many in total there would be in the sector. Government numbers say that there's around 70,000 undocumented people in the country. What proportion of those are on farms, we're not entirely sure.
And people don't really want to talk about it, I imagine.
And people certainly don't want to talk about it.
At least some of those illegal workers are asylum seekers, and we've been warned about them for years.
My point to the people smugglers is the game is up.
The boats may have stopped, but the number of people arriving on planes and seeking asylum has jumped to more than 95,000 since 2014. The latest numbers put the figure at 65 people every day.
This government has failed to notice that the people smugglers have changed their business model from boats to planes.
These women are some of those who arrived by plane. They sought asylum with claims of political and religious persecution. Now they're picking fruit without work rights in Sunraysia.
I come from Malaysia, just work for support my kids. I have 6 kids.
They spoke to us on the condition of anonymity. A lot of the workers aren't hired directly by farmers. They're handled by labour hire companies who send them from farm to farm.
Until December last year, I have a work visa. I don't have visa now.
They live in fear of surprise border force raids like this one on a farm near Melbourne that led to 61 arrests. More than 1,600 illegal workers were found by Border Force around the country last financial year.
It is very scary for those Malaysians who come here without work right. Once we've been caught, we might be deported anytime.
In February, the Parliament's Joint Committee on Migration pointed the finger at organised crime for putting people on planes and then funneling them into the illegal labour market while their asylum claims are processed. They called it an orchestrated scam that enables criminal elements to exploit foreign workers in Australia. Mildura's state polly calls it slavery.
If you're exploiting highly vulnerable people and they are earning next to nothing, then that's slavery. That's what slavery is. That's modern day slavery.
And she says shady labour hire companies are abusing workers in her town. This man says he paid a travel agent in Fiji who told him how to con his way into the country.
They said, just go to this certain travel agent and all you have to do is pay $2,350 and everything will be sorted. They told us to go think where the tourist visa is and the duration of the stay is 3 months.
He says he was driven to this property in Mildura and his passport was taken away. And then labour contractors set him to work with little pay on nearby farms.
In a day, you make about $50 or $75. I'm pretty sure I've been working legally.
It is criminal the way that people are being exploited, the way they're being treated. It's a disgrace.
Government says it's doing its bit to fix the shortage by bumping up the number of backpackers on farms. They said there's already a range of visa options for agricultural work, including skilled migration, seasonal worker programs and the working holiday maker visa. But farmers say more backpackers aren't the solution.
You're saying they're not good workers, the backpackers?
Some of them are great workers, but as a general cohort, they are not as efficient or as effective as the workers that, the other workers that we're talking about.
The illegal ones.
The illegal ones, yeah, I guess.
The proof is in the pudding. The reality is our table grape industry, for example, is booming because of the skill and quality of these workers.
Now they want the Prime Minister to intervene and create a specific agriculture visa to help get produce to the table, and an amnesty for existing workers.
The two biggest problems for horticulture is water and labour. So we definitely need the water to grow the crops, but there's no point in growing them if you can't pick them.
Time is ticking. Harvest season is just around the corner. You can fix this with the stroke of a pen.
Well, Tom Tilley joins us now. So, Tom, is it possible that by breaking the boat people smuggling model, we've just created a whole new one?
Yes, it's very possible. We basically just saw it there, Lisa. Since we stopped the boats, we've had 95,000 plane arrivals. So that creates this massive pool of people that are basically needing to survive here in Australia. They're ending up being exploited by these labour hire companies. And one of the problems here is what goes wrong. What happens when someone hurts themselves on a job? We heard stories of a guy who cut his Achilles tendon, and when the farmer tried to take him to hospital, he was too worried about getting deported, so he refused treatment.
Yeah, it's the kind of story you hear out of America, but we're not used to hearing about Australia, I suppose. Heard at the end of that story there that it could be fixed with the stroke of a pen. Does anyone really want to fix it, or is it a bit of a cosy arrangement where we get cheap fruit as consumers, the businesses can make money, and the government doesn't really need to address it because it's not a political problem?
Well, you see that some politicians want to address it. You had the local member there. Farmers want to address it. I guess for the labour hire companies who are profiteering out of these workers, they don't necessarily want it to change. There has been a crackdown. Victoria have just introduced tougher licensing restrictions and also bigger fines for those labour hire companies. But the farmers really want this to change as well. They don't want illegal workers on their property. They don't want situations where they can't look after people properly. So that's why they actually have come clean and as part of this story admitted on national television that they're using these thousands of illegal workers. So that stroke of a pen they're talking about is an agriculture visa that would actually allow them to use these workers in a way that suits their needs and get them on the books so they're not being exploited.
Well, the full statement from the Department of Home Affairs is available on our website if you're interested. In the meantime, Tom, thanks very much for the story and good to talk.
Thank you.